The grocery store was busy, filled with the usual sounds of shopping carts rolling, quiet conversations, and the occasional beeping of cash registers. An elderly woman stood at the checkout counter, her frail hands trembling as she reached into her purse. Her 2 children, a boy and a girl, stood beside her, watching in silence. The boy clutched the hem of her dress, his small fingers gripping tightly, while the girl held onto a half-empty loaf of bread. The cashier scanned the last item and announced the total. The elderly woman swallowed hard as she looked at the small collection of groceries, just the basics: bread, milk, rice, and a few vegetables. She opened her purse and began counting her money. A few crumpled bills, some coins, and nothing more. Her face fell. She was short. She hesitated. Then, with a heavy heart, picked up the carton of milk and pushed it aside. "I am sorry," she whispered. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve. "But Mama, we need milk for breakfast." The woman forced a smile, her eyes glistening. "Next time, my dear." The cashier sighed impatiently, removing the milk from the total. The people in line behind her shuffled, some checking their phones, others looking away. No one spoke. No one offered help. Then, from behind her, a calm voice broke the silence. "Let her keep it." The woman turned, surprised. A tall man in a simple black jacket stood there. His face was kind, his eyes gentle. Before she could say anything, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his card, and handed it to the cashier. "At everything," he said. The woman's lips parted in shock. "Sir, you do not have to." He smiled softly. "Please, let me." The cashier completed the transaction. The woman stared at the man, her eyes filling with tears. She tried to thank him, but the words caught in her throat. Her son, however, spoke for her. Looking up at the man, his voice small but sincere, he said, "Thank you, Mr. Keanu Reeves smiled, placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder, and walked away without another word. Days later, the woman would realize that this moment was only the beginning of something far greater. The elderly woman left the grocery store, still holding her children's hands. The plastic bags felt heavier than usual, not because of their weight, but because of the overwhelming emotions in her heart. She had never imagined that a stranger would step in to help her, let alone someone like him. As they walked home, her mind replayed the moment. The man's face, his quiet kindness, the way he had disappeared without waiting for thanks. It felt unreal. Her daughter looked up at her. "Mama, who was that man?" The woman shook her head. "I do not know, my dear. Just a kind soul." The little boy clutched the bag of groceries. "He looked like someone from the movies." She smiled softly but said nothing. She had more important things to think about. Rent was due, and her savings were almost gone. Life had been difficult ever since her husband passed away. She worked long hours as a cleaner, but it was barely enough to support her children. That night, as she prepared a simple meal for her family, she looked at the carton of milk. Something as small as this had become a luxury for them. She sighed, placing it back in the fridge. Tomorrow she would try to find extra work. The next morning, she took her children to school before heading to the market. She had been picking up small sewing jobs from a local tailor, fixing torn clothes in exchange for a few extra dollars. It was not much, but every bit helped. As she walked, she passed by a newspaper stand. Her eyes landed on the front page, and she stopped in her tracks. A familiar face stared back at her. It was him, the man from the grocery store. Her hands trembled as she picked up the paper. The headline read, "Keanu Reeves spotted in local market." Fans stunned by his act of kindness. Her heart pounded. She had heard of Keanu Reeves before, but she had never imagined meeting him, let alone receiving his kindness. She placed the paper back, shaking her head in disbelief. What were the chances? She hurried to the tailor shop, trying to push the thoughts aside. Work was her priority. However, as she entered the shop, the owner, Mr. Patel, called her over. "Good timing," he said, handing her a bag filled with clothes. "There is extra work today. A big order came in." She smiled, bowing slightly. "Thank you, sir." As she worked, carefully stitching and mending each piece, the doorbell rang. She barely noticed until Mr. Patel spoke excitedly. "Sir." What a surprise. She looked up and froze. Standing at the entrance, dressed in the same simple black jacket, was Keanu Reeves. Her breath caught in her throat. He had come here. Why? Mr. Patel shook his hand enthusiastically. It is an honor to have you here. How can I help you? Keanu smiled politely. I had some clothes I needed tailored. He placed a bag on the counter. I heard this place does excellent work. The woman quickly lowered her head, focusing on the fabric in her hands. She did not want to seem rude, but she felt embarrassed. Would he recognize her? Keanu glanced around, his eyes scanning the shop. Then, they stopped on her. For a moment, he simply watched. Then, he gave a small nod. You were at the market, he said gently. Her hands tightened around the fabric. Slowly, she looked up, her face flushed. Yes, I. She did not know what to say. Mr. Patel looked between them, surprised. You two know each other? Keanu smiled. Not really. But I was glad to help. The woman swallowed hard. I never got to thank you properly. You do not have to, he said. But are you doing well? His question caught her off guard. It was not something people usually asked, not in the way he did, with genuine concern. She hesitated, then forced a smile. I managed. Keanu studied her for a moment, then nodded. That is good to hear. He turned back to Mr. Patel. Take your time with the clothes. No rush. Mr. Patel beamed. Of course, sir. Keanu turned to leave, but then, as if remembering something, he looked at the woman once more. If you ever need anything, do not be afraid to ask. Before she could respond, he stepped outside, disappearing into the bustling street. The woman sat there, her heart racing. She had lived many years struggling alone, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something different. Hope. Little did she know, this encounter was about to change everything. The days passed, but the encounter with Keanu Reeves lingered in the elderly woman's mind. She continued working at the tailor's shop, stitching clothes late into the night while ensuring her children were cared for. Life had not become easier, but something felt different, a sense of warmth, a reminder that kindness still existed in the world. One afternoon, as she finished her tasks, Mr. Patel approached her with an envelope in his hand. This came for you, he said, placing it gently on the counter. She frowned. For me? Mr. Patel nodded. A man dropped it off this morning. He did not say much, just that it was important. Her hands trembled as she picked up the envelope. It had no name, only a simple seal. She carefully opened it, revealing a neatly folded letter inside. Her eyes moved across the words, and with each sentence, her breath grew heavier. I did not know if I should write this, but I felt I needed to. When I saw you at the grocery store, I was reminded of someone from my past. A woman who once helped me when I had nothing. I never got to repay her kindness, and perhaps I never will. But I can do something now. Please do not see this as charity. See it as a small gesture from someone who understands. I hope it helps, Keanu. Her fingers tightened around the letter, her heartbeat unsteady. Slowly, she reached into the envelope and pulled out a check. When she saw the amount written on it, the room seemed to spin. It was more money than she had ever seen in her life. Enough to pay off her debts, enough to ensure her children would never go hungry again, enough to change everything. Tears welled in her eyes. She covered her mouth with her hand, unable to process the reality of what had just happened. This was not just an act of kindness, it was something far greater. She rushed outside, her legs unsteady, scanning the street. She had to find him. She had to return this. But as she looked around, there was no sign of him. He was gone. For the next few days, she debated with herself. Was it right to accept this? Would it be selfish? She had always believed in hard work, in earning every meal with her own hands. But then she thought of her children, their tired faces, their quiet sacrifices. She thought of the nights she had gone to bed hungry just so they could eat. One evening, as she prepared dinner, her son suddenly spoke. Mama, will we ever see the kind man again? She looked at him, her heart aching. Maybe one day, my dear. Her daughter tilted her head. Why did he help us? She smiled softly. Because sometimes people do good things without expecting anything in return. The next morning she made a decision. She took a portion of the money and paid off her debts. Then she bought proper meals for her children, ensuring they were nourished. But she did not stop there. With the rest of the money, she went to the community shelter, a place she had once visited in her hardest times. She met families struggling just as she had. Without hesitation, she donated, ensuring others would have food, clothes, and a place to stay. She did not do this out of obligation. She did it because she understood. One day, as she walked past a small cafe, she stopped abruptly. Sitting inside alone was Keanu Reeves, quietly sipping his coffee. Her heart pounded. This was her chance. She stepped inside hesitantly. As if sensing her presence, he looked up and met her eyes. For a moment there was silence. Then, a soft smile appeared on his face. You found me, he said gently. She sat down across from him, placing the letter on the table. I did not know how to thank you. You do not have to, he replied. I only did what felt right. She took a deep breath. I wanted you to know. I did not keep all of it for myself. I used it to help others. Keanu's expression softened. There was no surprise, only understanding. You remind me of someone, he said quietly. Someone who once did the same for me. Her eyes widened slightly. Someone helped you? He nodded. A long time ago, when I was struggling, a kind woman helped me. She had nothing, but she shared what little she had. I never forgot that. He looked at her with quiet sincerity. In a way, I feel like I was repaying her by helping you. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Then maybe this was meant to happen. Keanu smiled. Maybe. As they sat there, an unspoken understanding passed between them. This was not just a moment of charity. It was a cycle of kindness, one that had started long ago and continued through the smallest acts of generosity. She had always believed she was alone in her struggles, but now she knew the truth. Kindness had a way of coming full circle. The elderly woman left the cafe that day with a feeling she could not quite describe. Gratitude, warmth, a sense of peace, perhaps all of them at once. She had walked into that place intending to return the kindness she had received, but instead, she had discovered something far greater. Kindness was never truly lost. It continued, passed from one person to another, like a ripple in a vast ocean. Not seemingly become perfect. There were still challenges, still struggles, but something had changed within her. She no longer carried her burdens alone. The weight of her hardships had been lightened not just by the money Keanu Reeves had given her, but by the knowledge that good people still existed. Her children noticed the change in her. She smiled more, held them closer, and for the first time in a long while, they saw hope in her eyes. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, her son spoke up. Mama, when I grow up, I want to be like him. She looked at him, surprised. Like who, my dear? The kind man, he said, his eyes bright. I want to help people the way he helped us. Her heart swelled with emotion. She reached out, brushing a gentle hand over his hair. Then you must remember, kindness is not about how much you have. It is about how much you are willing to give. The little boy nodded firmly, as if he had just learned the most important lesson of his life. The next morning, the elderly woman returned to the market, not to buy groceries, but to do something she had always wanted to do. She watched the people around her. The tired mothers, the struggling fathers, the elderly who counted their coins with worried expressions. She saw herself in them. She walked up to the cashier and placed a small amount of money on the counter. If anyone comes up short today, use this to help them. The cashier, surprised, looked at her with curiosity. Are you sure? She smiled warmly. Yes. Someone once did the same for me. As she walked away, she felt something lift from her heart. This was not about repaying a debt. It was about continuing a cycle that had started long before her. Somewhere, in another part of the city, Keanu Reeves sat quietly in a park, watching the sunset. He did not need to know what she had done. He did not need to see the results of his kindness, because deep down, he already knew. Newness had a way of finding its way back, always.